weekend. It's Independence Day. We celebrate our independence. As a nation, we celebrate the creation of something new by God. God didn't need to recreate Earth, to recreate a place on Earth where a different vibration could reign supreme, where vibration of freedom, where vibration where every soul, regardless of their background, could reach its full soul's potential, where every soul could express the happiness, the joy, and the fulfillment that their heart desired. So a new world, a new place on the earth was then discovered, made, created. This new world was a place where people could come from all over the world and experience a deeper level of fulfillment and a deeper level of independence based on the creed that all were created equal and endowed by their creator with inalienable rights. So that's what we celebrate this weekend. And as we celebrate independence, I wanted to do a sermon called Free Your Mind, and the rest will follow. Free your mind, and the rest will follow. Free your mind, and the rest will follow. These words were written by a musical poet named George Clinton. Some of you may know George Clinton. And they were then subsequently sung years later in another song by En Vogue, who redid the George Clinton song. And it's synonymous, actually, with a scripture in the Bible: seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else shall be added unto you. Those two scriptures, those two ideas are actually synonymous. And so the question for us right now is freeing your mind, and the rest will follow. The rest is what we desire. The rest is the desires of our hearts. The rest are the things our hearts long for, yearn for, and yearn to express and experience. When we free our minds, that's the rest that will follow. So I have a question for you, and I want you to hold this as ardently as possible right now. When you free your mind, what is the rest that you want to follow? What is your heart's desire that you would like to make manifest? Just take a moment, breathe that in. Just take a moment and visualize that. Just take a moment and feel the energy of what you desire to experience. What is the rest that you would like to follow when you free your mind? Just take a moment. Just take that in. You may even to yourself mention a word, an idea, a thought, a feeling, an energy. What is the rest that you would like to follow when you free your mind? Now, the reason I wanted you to hold this in is because it's important to focus on that which you would like to manifest. When you free your mind and you let the rest follow, it is important to focus on what you want to manifest, what you desire to manifest, because your outlook determines your outcome. And what you just did is you projected out what you desire to manifest. And what you projected out as your outlook really does influence your outcome. And this is so important because habitually we have learned to focus on the obstacles instead. And that thwarts our creative desire. For example, you can either focus on your outlook, which determines your outcome, or you can focus on the obstacles that are in front of you. And if you focus on the obstacles that are in front of you, those obstacles will be magnified because energy flows where attention goes. And if you put your attention on the obstacles, those obstacles will seem bigger, they will become bigger, and there will be more of them. So if you had for example, if you had two gardens, the garden of your desires and the garden of that which you want to avoid, or the garden of your obstacles, if there was one garden that you focused on, that you weeded, that you fertilized, that you focused your energy on, shouldn't it be the garden of your outlook, the garden of your desire, versus planting and tilling and seeding and fertilizing the garden of your fears and your doubts and all of the obstacles between you and your desire? As Rumi said, all that we want is already there. Our task is to remove the obstacles. And we don't remove the obstacles by focusing on them. We remove the obstacles by allowing the power of God to lift them from us, by focusing, by keeping our eyes on the prize. So the point of this is our outlook does determine our outcome. However, our consciousness has been traumatized by all the pain and suffering of the past. Our consciousness has been traumatized. So we must elevate our consciousness above the trauma. We must elevate our consciousness so that the trauma no longer has the power to hold us back. We must elevate our consciousness. And how do we do that? Through prayer and meditation. For when we pray and when we meditate, we go into a different state of consciousness. Each time we pray, each time we meditate, the part of us that is God expands, and the part of us, unlike God, diminishes, because we experience more and more of ourselves as God. We experience more of the God energy around us. We experience more of the God energy coming through us. We experience more of the God energy as us. And that becomes our new reality. That becomes our new base feeling. That becomes our new energy. And the energy of fear, the energy of doubt, the energy of guilt, the energy of shame diminishes within us and becomes less and less of who and what we are. So through this prayer, through this meditation, and through the energetic and emotional release that releases the energetic charge of all of that trauma, we become open vessels for the light. In other words, we are then in our holiness. A Course in Miracles says, our holiness, which is synonymous with our godliness, our holiness, which is synonymous with the inner state of forgiveness, our holiness, which is synonymous with the inner state of oneness with God. In our holiness, we can do all things. A Course in Miracles lesson 38 says, in our holiness, we can do all things. And that is synonymous with the verse in the Bible, with man, all things are, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. In our holiness, we can do all things, and our holiness is our salvation. That is A Course in Miracles lesson 39. Our holiness is our salvation. In other words, when we go into that holy space, when we nurture that holiness, when the light of God within us is nurtured and we feel it more and more, and we realize that that light of God is truly who we are, and light is truly what we are, and in that light we are innocent, and in that light we are perfect for God's purpose, just as we are. In that light we are powerful beyond measure. In that light we are masters. When we go into that space of our holiness, it frees us from the constraints of the world. A Course in Miracles lesson 39 says, this holiness frees us from all the constraints of time and space. And I want to share something with you. I've been reading this book on near-death experiences. And one of the things that the beings talk about who have had a near-death experience is that they lost all sense of time and space. They felt that all of the world was available to them, and they felt the infinite energy of love. But let me tell you something. You don't have to have a near-death experience to experience that. Through cultivating the light of God within you through prayer, meditation, and release, you can have that same transcendent experience where you transcend your body without having a near-death experience. You don't have to get into a near-fatal car crash in order to experience it. But that is the holiness in which all things are possible. And that is the holiness that is your salvation. That is the holiness that allows you to free your mind. So the point of all of this is free your mind, and the rest will follow. In order for the rest that you have focused on to follow, you must free your mind. So how can we do this in practical ways? I'm going to offer 3 examples, and then I'm out, okay? Number 1, free yourself from what if I fail. Number 2, free yourself from I can't. And number 3, free yourself from what will they think. So I'm going to repeat these for you. Number 1, free yourself from what if I fail. Number 2, free yourself from what? From I can't. And number 3, free yourself from what will they think. What do I mean when I say what if I free yourself from what if I fail? When I say free yourself from what if I fail, I'm drawn to the Seth book, the Jane Roberts book, The Nature of Personal Reality. What Seth said in that book was, anytime a new opportunity enters our minds, the first thing that happens is that we access the database of experiences in our minds, kind of like doing a Google lookup these days, or kind of like going to the card catalog of experiences in the old days of the libraries. So we Google, new experience comes up. We Google, what in our experience resembles that? And what pops up are all the times we failed. What pops up are the difficulties. Because our minds have been traumatized, the trauma pops up. And as Jan Van Zant says, when you declare yourself to be a thing, anything unlike it shows up for healing. So the trauma pops up. And all of a sudden we think, what if I fail? It's natural for us to do this. But we can counteract this, and we can free our mind of what if I fail. We can free our mind of what if I fail by working with the idea, what if I succeed? What if in this moment I chose to be in my holiness and failure wasn't an option? What if in this moment I chose to be in my holiness and I felt innocent, perfect, and fully deserving, and there would be no roadblock between me and this desire? What if I succeed? What does success look like? What does success feel like? What does success feel like within me? What is the essence of the energy of this success? Because when you put yourself into your holiness, you put yourself into the availability of the energy of success. For in your holiness, you are able, ready, and receptive to the idea, what if I succeed instead of what if I fail? Secondly, free yourself from I can't. As the Bible said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And A Course in Miracles lesson 38 and 39 say, in my holiness, all things are possible, because in my holiness, I do not allow the constraints of time, space, the past, or common consciousness to constrain what I am willing to say yes to. Because God wills for your perfect happiness. A Course in Miracles lessons 101 to 103. Your task is to say yes to God. But when we think of constraints, when we think of limits, we constrain the yes we give in response to the yes God offers. So you can't. One of my favorite affirmations from Catherine Ponder is, I alone can't do it, but the Christ within me can, and is creating miracles in my mind, my body, and affairs here and now. You alone can't do it. You can't do it because you've been shut down before. You can't do it because you feel yourself to be guilty. You can't do it because you feel yourself to be inadequate. You can't do it because, quote, they are against you in your human perspective. But we're not operating from our human perspective, remember? Because we are nurturing and we are building the part of us that is God to the degree that the part of us that is God takes over, takes precedence, and the part of us that is God starts creating instead of the part of us that has been traumatized. Because the part of us that is God embraces the part of us that has been traumatized. The part of us that is God neutralizes the part of us that has been traumatized. The part of us that is God erases the part of us that has been traumatized. Because the part of us that is God is a channel for all of the grace and all of the glory and all of the power of God. And if all of the grace and glory and power of God can move through you, that's the same power, grace, and glory that created heaven and earth. Don't you think it can transform the misunderstandings within your mind? Yes, it can. As the scripture said, the power of God within you is greater than anything outside of you. So when you free yourself from I can't, you know that the holy beloved child of God can. Because the holy beloved child of God is the channel, the vessel, and the avatar for all of God's grace and glory. And that part of you is unlimited. And as you operate from that part of you, from your holiness, from your wholeness, and from your highest self, I can't becomes I can. As a former president said, there is no limit to what we can do. Si se puede. Yes, we can. Well, in your higher self, yes, you can. And the last thing we want to do is to free ourselves from the they. What will they think? What will they think? How many times have we ever engaged in a new endeavor and thought, well, I learned that the nail that sticks up gets pounded down. I learned that if I'm different, I will be rejected by my peers. Well, our inner child, which is the crystallization of the consciousness that we came on earth to heal, that inner child fears being different, fears that it will be shunned, fears that it will not get what it needs to survive because it perceives everything outside of it as the source of its light and its life. But in truth, God is the source of your light and your life. And when you look to God and allow God to heal that part of you that fears being different, that fears being rejected, that fears not getting what it needs to survive, God is the ultimate source. These folks were just conduits for God's love. But you've got a direct line to God now, and you can feel God's love no matter what you're going through. And so with that, they don't matter. Focus your mind on God and they won't matter. That outside affirmation that you fought was the affirmation of the ego that wants to stay in pain. So the question becomes, do you want to stay in that consciousness? You know, the common consciousness is life's a witch and then you die. The common consciousness is I'm sinful and I must go through this obstacle course in order to gain my glory. But that is not a consciousness that is necessary, nor is it a consciousness of the holy beloved of God who is innocent and fully deserving and need not atone for guilt. For as A Course in Miracles says, there is no sin, it has no consequence, so there is no reason to be guilty and to hold yourself back due to guilt. So you can leave they behind. A part of us feels a responsibility. Let's call it race responsibility, because we are a part of the human race, to be in the same quagmire emotionally, energetically, physically, and spiritually. But think of it this way. If you are sinking in the same quicksand as everybody else, How can you let them out? How can you invite them out? How can you stand on firm ground and throw them a rope? You can't. And you didn't come here to be in the quicksand. You came here to stand on your firmer, higher ground and throw everyone a rope. You are the vessels of light. You are the bringers of dawn. You are the channels for God's light, love, and healing. And God needs you now more than ever before. So your task is to release yourself from the chains of they and what will they think. Because the only thing that matters is what God thinks. And God thinks you are holy. God thinks you are lovely. God thinks you are lovable. God thinks you are enough. God thinks you are God's beloved child. And when you think like God thinks, a set of lessons in the Course in Miracles, my mind holds only what I think with God. When you accept what God thinks of you, and when you allow yourself to be what God thinks of you, they don't matter. And what they think don't matter. So this is all nice and well and good. And rah, 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 boom, ba, sis, boom, ba. But how do we work with this in the real world? Getting back to my theme of Independence Day and freeing your mind, and the rest will follow. How do we work with this in the real world? Well, we've been given a situation right here on Earth. For you see, the United States was created as a new creation in order that we might all find our independence and live to the fulfillment of our soul's ultimate purpose. And we have a choice right now. We can either see current events through the lens of our collective trauma, which is working itself out right now, or we can see the current events as an opportunity for us to create the country and, in truth, the world that we want. Now, right now, I know there's been all this political upheaval and all this political turmoil, and it's so easy to see it all through the lens of our country's trauma. You know, our country has had a legacy of victimization. Where I live in the DC area, in southern DC, there's this road that leads down to southern Maryland called the Indian Head Highway. And without thinking about it, we call it the Indian Head Highway. But then when you think about it, you realize it's called the Indian Head Highway because the road was lined with the skulls of all the Native Americans that they killed. And that's how it got the name Indian Head Highway. That's national trauma that's working itself out. When we see the legacy of slavery, that's national trauma that's working itself out. When we see the legacy of any new wave of immigrants in this country, when you look at the Eastern Europeans, such as the Poles, or when you look at the Italians, each time a new wave of immigrants came into the country, that new wave was on the lowest rung of the social ladder with the least capital, which is why you got the Polish jokes. They didn't really understand English, and so they labeled them as dumb, which is why you got other ethnicities and slurs. This is a part of the trauma that is working itself out that we might form a more perfect union. So all this division is working itself out. We are seeing it so we can choose to see ourselves differently, as whole, as one nation, indivisible, as a nation where all are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights. And right now it looks a little ugly. It looks a little ugly because it looks like our country may veer towards fascism. Who knows? Our task is to free our minds of our personal trauma in the ways outlined before, so that we can free our minds of the part of us that is in trauma, so that we can support the freeing of this country from its trauma that is working itself out, so it need not destroy itself or revert to some form of government such as fascism that need not be, that is counter to the creed of this country and its founding. Every group has pain. I'm reminded of that line in Dreamgirls where when Effie said, "But I'm in pain," when they were kicking her out of the group. And Effie White was like, "I'm in pain, I'm in pain." And the chorus said, "Effie, we all got pain. Our task as bringers of the dawn is to bring light, to bring love, to bring healing, and to bring grace to our national trauma, to free our minds and to free our collective mind of the legacy of our national trauma, so that the truth of God's vision for this country can be made manifest." And when you do this for yourself, as A Course in Miracles lesson 109 says, I'm not alone. 19 says, I'm not alone in the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in the effects of my healing. You do it for the country. So you heal your personal trauma. You come into your highest self. You free your mind by being in your holiness, and you create a space for healing for all. So in other words, right now, as we're going through all of this national upheaval and this political upheaval, we can reflexively devolve into our victimhood and our fear that we will be hurt. And we can let the vision of our past, individual and collective trauma, paint on the blank canvas. Or we can choose the mastery that we have come here to experience and allow God's vision for its beloved children to be made manifest. That choice is ours, and it's yours, and it begins with freeing your mind. God needs your mind to be free so God can use it to paint God's picture of harmony and love and unity on the canvas that is blank right now. God needs your heart to heal of its old heartbreak so that you can open to the love of God, so the love of God can be shown in this country, so that all of us who are brothers and sisters can show love to each other instead of the tribal divisions and the tribal hatreds that are showing us right now that we need a healing. So I ask you again, will you free yourself and open to the light and love of your holiness for you, for your community, for your country, for you are not alone. And then you free yourself, the rest will follow. Your own peace, your own joy, your own satisfaction, your own fulfillment. You free yourself by looking at success as the holy beloved of God, knowing you deserve it, and saying, what if I succeed? You free yourself by knowing that you can. Si se puede. Yes, we can. And you free yourself by not worrying about what they think, but worrying about, and not even worrying about it, but reflecting on and focusing on what God thinks. God thinks you are amazing. Free your mind, and the rest will follow. And that's what I want to share with you today. Thank you.